Welcome back to Us Mint Mysteries. Today, I have one burning question for you. Have you ever checked your old pocket change? Those forgotten jars of coins? Or the dusty roll of nickels sitting in a drawer? Because hidden inside could be one of the ultra-rare silver Jefferson nickels, worth not just hundreds, not just thousands, but in some cases well into the six-figure range. Yes, you heard that right. A single nickel that could change your life. Stay with me, because you don't want to miss even one of these shocking discoveries. And before we dive into the first coin, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our treasure hunting family, so you never miss the chance to uncover a fortune hiding in plain sight. Now, let's begin with a coin that nearly every American over the age of 50 has seen at some point in their life. The 1964 Jefferson nickel. At first glance, you might brush it off as just another common pocket change coin, especially in worn condition. But here's the shocking twist: some of these nickels, even the ones that look ordinary, can be worth a small fortune if you know what details to look for. 1964 was the final year the U.S. Mint struck billions of nickels before temporarily removing mint marks due to coin shortages. Over 1 billion nickels were produced that year, making it the single highest mintage of any Jefferson nickel. That's why so many people think they're worthless. But not all 1964 nickels are created equal. The truth is, a handful of them are hiding jaw-dropping secrets. The worn nickel sitting in someone's pocket could carry a rare double die error, a full steps designation, or even a proof strike that slipped into circulation. Imagine this: a simple coin with heavy circulation, maybe scratched, maybe dull. Yet, if the details on Monticello's steps are sharp and complete, collectors will fight over it at auction. A 1964 nickel with full steps in high mint state has sold for over $25,000. And here's where it gets even crazier: rare double die examples, where the inscriptions or Monticello itself appear doubled, can push that value into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, let's put this into perspective. A worn 1964 nickel that most people would toss into a Coinstar machine might only be worth 5 cents. But if it carries that double die error, even in circulated condition, collectors could pay $10,000 or more. And if you're lucky enough to have one preserved in uncirculated or proof condition with those dramatic errors, the price tag can skyrocket beyond $450,000. Yes, nearly $500,000 for a coin people ignore every single day. So, how do you identify one of these potential treasures? Take a close look at the lettering Liberty, or In God We Trust, on the front. If you see strong doubling, that's your first clue. Flip it over and inspect Monticello. Do you see crisp, clean steps leading up to the building? That's another major sign. Even in worn condition, those errors can be spotted. And they're the difference between pocket change and life-changing money. Think about it: millions of Americans handled these nickels in 1964, when the Beatles first came to America, when gas was 30 cents a gallon, when Kennedy had just been taken from us. These nickels carry history in their metal, but hidden within that history are a few rare survivors, the golden needles in a haystack, worth more than most classic cars, and that's only the first coin on our list. The value just keeps climbing from here, so don't go anywhere. Next up, we're moving on to another Jefferson nickel that might blow your mind even more. Next up, let's rewind the clock even further, all the way back to 1939, the very first full year of Jefferson nickel production. Now, most people assume these early nickels are just old pocket change. But here's where the story takes a shocking turn. Because a 1939 nickel, even in just fine condition, could hide details that catapult its value into the stratosphere. You see, 1939 nickels were struck in far fewer numbers compared to later years. But the real magic lies not just in the age, but in a handful of rare design variations and errors. Collectors know them as the 1939 double die reverse and the 1939 reverse of 1940. These are the coins that make even seasoned numismatists stop and stare. Picture this: you're holding a coin with a soft gray patina, the kind of wear that shows it passed through countless American hands during the Great Depression and the early days of World War I. but then you flip it over and notice something unusual. The steps of Monticello appear doubled. The lettering looks shadowed, almost as if the engraver's hand shook. That's no mistake. That's a double die error. And in today's market, even in circulated condition, collectors will pay $5,000 to $10,000 just to own it. Now, if you're lucky enough to have one with the reverse of 1940, a subtle design change with sharper, more defined details on Monticello, that's where the values start reaching into jaw-dropping numbers. In mint state with full steps, these rarities have crossed the $100,000 mark at auction, and for proof-like strikes or uniquely preserved survivors, some experts estimate the ceiling could be as high as $500,000 or more. Just think about that $500,000 for a nickel most people would never give a second glance. So, how can you spot one of these gems in fine condition? It comes down to details. On the front, check Jefferson's portrait even in wear, his cheek and hairline should still be visible. On the back, focus on Monticello. Does the lettering of Monticello or 5 cents look doubled? Or do the steps appear more squared and distinct than usual? If so, you might be holding one of the most valuable nickels in U.S. history. And here's something most people forget: in 1939, the Philadelphia Mint produced most of these. But if you happen to spot a small D or S mint mark on the reverse, the rarity climbs even higher. A 1939D in uncirculated with full steps is one of the toughest Jefferson nickels to find, and those have fetched prices that make collectors' jaws drop. Imagine it. A coin minted during the time when Americans were listening to swing music, when television was still a novelty, when Europe was on the brink of war. A nickel that survived all those decades, passed through grocery counters and gas stations, and yet today could be worth more than a house. That's the thrill of coin collecting: history and fortune, hiding in plain sight. So, if you thought the 1964 nickel was impressive, the 1939 will leave you stunned. And believe it or not, we're just getting warmed up. Before I reveal the third nickel on our list, don't forget to subscribe to us Mint Mysteries, because treasures like these are out there, and you don't want to miss your chance to discover them. Coming up next, the values only get higher. Moving on, our next stop takes us to the year 1940, just 1 year after the mysterious 1939 varieties shook the collecting world. Now, at first glance, a 1940 Jefferson nickel in fine condition might look like nothing more than a well-traveled piece of small change. But don't be fooled, because within this date lies one of the most surprising chapters in American coinage history, and the potential for a staggering payday if you happen to find the right one. The 1940 nickel carries a fascinating story. It was struck as the world stood on the edge of World War II. America hadn't yet entered the conflict, but the mint was preparing for changes in metals and designs that would soon follow. Over 176 million nickels rolled out of Philadelphia that year. But here's the shocking twist: not all of them were struck with the same care. Some 1940 nickels feature bold strikes with crisp details, while others came out weak, soft, and prone to wear. That's where collectors start hunting for treasures. Even in fine condition, certain 1940 nickels stand out if they show strong details of Monticello steps or if they come with rare mint marks. A 1940D nickel with full steps is one of the toughest finds in the Jefferson series, and in higher grades these have sold for over $25,000. But let's raise the stakes even higher. Proof nickels from 1940, those specially struck with mirrored fields and frosted devices, are so scarce that even circulated examples can command $5,000 to $10,000 in pristine condition. These proofs have reached jaw-dropping levels, soaring to $100,000 and beyond. And then there are the errors. The most famous is the 1940 double die reverse, where the word Monticello and 5 cents show clear doubling. Even in worn condition, this variety can fetch thousands, with record-setting specimens climbing well past $150,000. Add a rare proof strike into that mix, and you're looking at values creeping toward the $500,000 mark. Imagine holding a nickel struck over 80 years ago, worth more than most retirement accounts. How do you spot a potential jackpot among the 1940 nickels? Flip it over and carefully inspect Monticello. If the letters look shadowed or doubled, you may have the doubled die variety. And always check the steps. If you can count sharp, uninterrupted steps leading up to the building, even in a coin that's seen decades of circulation, collectors will line up to pay top dollar. And here's something else most people don't realize: the 1940 nickel marked a turning point. It was the last full year before America's entry into the war, the last before silver and other alloys would alter the composition of coins forever. This gives every 1940 nickel an added weight of history, making rare examples not only valuable but deeply meaningful to collectors. Think about it: millions of these coins jingled in pockets during the golden age of swing music, when FDR delivered his famous fireside chats, when cars with wide chrome grilles ruled the highways. Yet hidden among them, a few rare survivors carry a price tag of hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's the kind of discovery that keeps treasure hunters searching. So if you've been impressed so far, buckle up, because the next coin on our list takes the excitement to an entirely new level. The values climb higher, the errors get rarer, and the shock factor will leave you in disbelief. Next up, let's fast forward to 1970, a time of bell-bottoms, muscle cars, and the height of the Vietnam era. Now, you might be thinking, wait a second, a 1970s nickel? I've seen hundreds of those. They can't be worth much, and that's exactly why this coin is so deceptive. Because hidden among the ordinary, everyday nickels from San Francisco are a few varieties that can explode in value and leave collectors absolutely stunned. The key here is the 1970s proof nickels. You see, San Francisco was striking proof sets for collectors, but in the process, a handful of extraordinary minting errors occurred. Most shocking of all is the 1970s small date or special strike error, where the date appears slightly different in size compared to the standard version. At first glance, you might miss it completely, but once collectors recognize this rarity, prices skyrocketed. Even in circulated or fine condition, if this variety shows up, it can command $5,000 to $10,000. And here's where the story gets wild. High-grade proof 1970s nickels with that small date variety have sold at auction for over $35,000. But the rarest of them all? A handful of cameo-proof strikes coins with frosted devices and deep mirror fields have broken through the six-figure barrier. One nearly perfect example stunned the collecting world when it sold for close to $200,000. And experts believe the absolute finest survivors could one day touch $500,000 or more. Imagine that, a coin struck in the disco era worth more than some of the finest 19th century gold pieces. Now, let's talk about how to identify one of these treasures. First, look carefully at the date. The small date variety is subtle. The 7 and 0 in 1970 appear thinner and slightly higher than on the regular issue. On proofs, look for that sharp contrast between Jefferson's frosted portrait and the mirrored background. And always pay attention to the S mint mark. Variations in shape or placement can add even more rarity, and in the world of serious collectors, tiny differences equal massive dollars. What makes this even more fascinating is that by 1970, coin collecting was booming. Millions of proof sets were sold, and yet these rare varieties slipped through, almost as if fate intended them to hide among the ordinary. For decades, people overlooked them, tucking proof sets into drawers or cashing in nickels as nothing more than spending money. But today, if you pull one out and spot that rare strike, you're looking at a life-changing discovery. Picture it, a nickel minted during the era of Woodstock, when gas was 36 cents a gallon, when families gathered around wood-paneled televisions. That same nickel today could pay off your mortgage. That's the power of rarity, and that's the magic of the Jefferson series. And here's the most exciting part: we're not finished yet. If you've been amazed by what you've seen so far, wait until you hear about the final coin on our list. This last one pushes values to the very peak, and could be the single most valuable Jefferson nickel ever to slip through someone's fingers. And finally, we come to the 1960 Jefferson nickel, a coin that most people would swear is nothing special. Just another old nickel from the pocket change of the early 1960s. But here's where the story takes an unbelievable turn. Because hidden in this date is one of the most elusive and jaw-dropping rarities in the entire Jefferson nickel series. At first glance, a 1960 nickel in fine condition looks ordinary. The surface might be dulled, Jefferson's cheek flattened, the steps of Monticello worn smooth. Most people wouldn't think twice before spending it. But what if I told you that a few 1960 nickels carry errors so dramatic, so rare, that their values rival some of the greatest American coin treasures? The most famous is the 1960 proof nickel with the Type 1 and Type 2 design differences. During that year, the mint experimented with modifications to the reverse design, leading to slight but noticeable variations in Monticello's lettering and steps. Collectors who spot the right version in pristine proof condition are looking at a coin worth tens of thousands of dollars. Even circulated or fine condition examples with certain doubling errors have sold for $5,000 to $15,000. But here's where it gets jaw-dropping. A select handful of full steps nickels from 1960, especially from the Denver Mint, are so rare that experts call them unicorns. These coins display sharp, complete steps leading up to Monticello, something almost never seen in this year. And when one of these elusive pieces comes to auction, the prices skyrocket. Not just $50,000, not just $100,000, but in some cases, well over $450,000. Imagine that. Nearly $500,000 for a nickel struck during the Eisenhower era. And the story doesn't stop there. Rare proof strikes from 1960 with cameo or deep cameo finishes where Jefferson's portrait looks frosted against a mirror-like background are some of the most visually stunning nickels ever made. High-grade examples have stunned bidders, climbing into the six-figure range with ease. Experts whisper that the absolute finest possible example, if it ever surfaces, could even top $1 million. $1 million. For a 5-cent coin. So, how do you know if your 1960 nickel is a potential treasure? Look closely at Monticello on the reverse. If the steps are sharp, with no breaks, that's your first clue. On proofs, watch for those subtle design differences and that brilliant cameo contrast. And never ignore doubling in the lettering, because a double die from this year could turn your nickel into a jackpot. Think about it, these nickels were minted when Elvis was still dominating the charts, when John F. Kennedy was running for president, when America was on the edge of a new decade of change. Millions of them were spent on hamburgers, soda, and movie tickets. But a tiny fraction escaped with hidden details that today make them some of the most valuable nickels in existence. And there you have it, 5 Jefferson nickels that could turn an ordinary coin jar into a fortune. From the overlooked 1964 to the historic 1939, the wartime era 1940, the shocking 1970s, and finally, the life-changing 1960, each one carrying history, mystery, and the chance at unbelievable value. So the question is, have you checked your nickels lately? Because you never know, the next fortune might just be hiding in your change. If you enjoyed this journey through the secrets of American coinage, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join us here at Us Mint Mysteries, where history and treasure are always just one coin away.